Mainstream media shills will still defend this show, despite the golf club incident.
Rewind.
Now, there's some normies who have tuned into my video and they're probably scratching their heads thinking, what is The Last of Us? It's an acclaimed video game series which started in 2013, where you had Troy Baker voicing Joel Miller. It's a fantastic game. I've played it twice. I played both the original and the remastered version, and to be honest, I think the original version is way better, didn't need remastering. Now it's undergone another remaster yet again, built from the ground up supposedly from Sony PlayStation for the PS5. I don't own a PS5, so I can't attest to how good or bad it actually is. I've only played the second game once, and the good points about it, the graphics are amazing, the way you stealth and kill people, but the kill animations become rinse and repeat after a while, so it does get a little bit nauseating, the fatigue kicks in. But the whole storyline with Abby Johnson is terrible. It just goes in a completely weird direction that I did not want this series to go in. Yeah, we still see Joel Miller in it, but the way he's utilized is pretty terrible, and I wasn't a big fan of that direction, and neither were the fans when everything leaked in 2020. Do you remember that shit show? So you can see here on IMDb, this is currently sitting at a 9.6 out of 10, based on 14,000 reviews. It's pretty amazing. And wait, now I've got to say, one of the things I loved about this episode was the way it began. Okay, you got John Hannah, of all people. It's 1968, and you see this chat show host and these two obviously renowned scientists, researchers in their field of expertise about viruses, a pandemic in the future. So you can kind of see where this is all curtailing into, and it's a very well thought out scene. It's typical HBO production values at full mast. You can see it's really well thought out. And I thought, wow, the video game didn't have this, but this is what I like. It's a good adaptation. Unfortunately, I've got to bring his name into the procession here. Neil Druckmann, the man who wants to take Naughty Dog and Sony video games into I suppose he wants to interblend both video games and film into one. I heard something that Sony wants to do this, or Naughty Dog specifically. I don't know. To me personally, as a video gamer, I'm playing the first Mass Effect again from the Legendary Edition release, and I like that. I don't need it to be super realistic that I can't tell what's real and what isn't. I like video games to be video games for a specific reason. Apart from that, I think the one weak point of the film, and thankfully it is short-lived, is the character of Sarah, as played by Nico Parker. Who? Exactly. Didn't know who she was. She's like a mini version of Thandie Newton. I think that's the best way to describe her. And she doesn't do a hell of a lot in the way of making me care about her. And in fact, the first 14 minutes, I'd probably say, it's probably a precise amount of minutes that we do see her. And in the video game, we don't even get to know Sarah. She's like, she's there, then she's not there anymore. And I think in a video game, she is portrayed a lot more better, because you've got to remember, when you've got actors in an acting booth, or they've got mocap suits on, and they're giving the performance of their life for a video game, it's a lot more intense. But whereas for a live action version of that video game, you can kind of take a few shortcuts. And I think Nico Parker has about as much dynamic range as the facial expressions of Tessa Thompson. Her acting is that bad, it really is. But the camera likes to linger on her a lot, Now, I don't know if it's to say to everybody, this is diversity, Hollywood. We're checking all those boxes you keep moaning about. And the camera lingers on her far more than it needs to. And I didn't like that. I'm just thinking, okay, are we going to see anything else from Sarah before her demise? And when that all happens, I swear it's almost a carbon copy of what happened in the game. Because the reason why I say this, Neil Druckmann, or the brief that the actors were given, was that you cannot look at any footage of the video game. You can't even play the video game. And I guess that's probably a fair point, because you don't want to mimic the performances of Ashley Johnson, who plays Ellie in that game, and Troy Baker. So I kind of get that. Actors are actors and actresses, and they may want to copy the performances or be influenced by those performances, and you just can't really go there on that one. So Craig Mazin, the guy behind Chernobyl, he's teamed up with Neil Druckmann, or rather Neil Druckmann abducted Mazin in the back of a van, and they discussed their deal. They hashed out all the plot points and what was going to happen. And Craig Mazin was made a disparaging comment about the nature of this TV show, how it's not watching pixels die on screen, because I guess Craig doesn't play video games and doesn't understand the fact that when the character you're playing, whether it's a male or a female, dies, they're resurrected for the next level of their gameplay, and you start all over again, and you can approach certain scenarios in a different way when you're resurrected. Pedro Pascal, we got to talk about him as Joel Miller. He's pretty good. Is he my choice, my first choice to go to? No.
But if you're feeling lost,
you tell me to look for the light and I'll break your jaw.
I've actually got a couple of choices, maybe three. So the first one would be Nikolai Coster-Waldau, who was in Game of Thrones. I thought he was always my fan cast for this series. And failing that, then you would have had Gerard Butler, but he's too big a movie star to be on an HBO series. I think he would have been terrific. But given what you know about the video games and Joel Miller, I guess Jerry Butler probably had a bit of an escape, to be honest. If you don't want to be invested in this series, and trust me, it will go in a very strange direction, either by the end of this season or at the beginning of season 2, then you can watch Logan with Hugh Jackman and Daphne Keane, because their relationship is very much Joel and Ellie from The Last of Us. So you have that alternative if this show is not what you signed on for. Now, if you look at The Last of Us Rotten Tomato scores, I mean, it's almost neck and neck. 99% fresh from the critics, 96% from the audience. Now, what I find interesting, given the ratings here, and if you go to Metacritic, they've only given it 84, which I thought was interesting. So maybe like me, they found a few things they weren't quite in agreement with from the video game source material to the live action version. Anna Torv, I've got to mention her. You know her as Olivia Dunham from Fringe. She's in this as Tess. I thought she was great. And Merle Dandridge, who plays Marlene, the leader of the Fireflies. I thought she was another terrific performance in this first episode. She's got acting chops. You can tell she's a grounded individual in terms of her performance. She's great compared to Nico Parker, who just cannot act a piece of wood. I thought Mel was fantastic. We got to talk about, now this is something I don't often say about an actress, but Bella Ramsey, you know her as Leona Mormont from Game of Thrones, and she plays Ellie, Patient Zero. So if you know the video game, you know where I'm going with this. She has a very interesting face. I'll say that much. It's full of emotion and a lot of interesting expressions. And somebody cruelly referred to her as the Wicked Witch of the East. I have to admit, that did make me chuckle. But I was apprehensive about how she was going to play Ellie. I think she's played a video game, because while I'm watching her, yep, she's wearing the outfit that we all know Ellie from in the first video game, and if you closed your eyes, you would think you were actually listening to Ashley Johnson's performance, I mean, it's kind of almost quite close in terms of how she delivers her lines and how she reacts to things. And I thought she was pretty good in this episode, really good. And like you can see her disdain for Joel, but yet willing to take orders from him. And I kind of dug that. I did. Again, the production values are great. It's a bit scary because we've just come out of a pandemic. Some countries still are living in a pandemic, if you think about it. So I don't know how it's going to jive with people who might still be paranoid about going outside. And last but not least, we have to talk about the sibling rivalry, in inverted commas, as portrayed by Pedro, Pascal, and Gabriel Luna as Tommy, or Uncle Tommy, if you happen to be the late Sarah. And they're both pretty good in their roles, pretty much alpha males in their own respective rights, but of course somewhere down the line they might be taking orders from the females, because that could happen in this show, which is an adaptation of a beloved video game. So folks, if you enjoyed my oversight, my overview for this first episode, and the next week's episode looks like it's setting up something very interesting. I think all eyes are going to be on that one, specifically for the practical special effects they might employ. And there are some jaw-dropping moments in this first episode that made me think, oh shit, this is TV. You would actually expect this level of production value for a B or A-list movie in that respect. So I was very impressed with that. But again, the behind the show shenanigans from what the writers have said. Neil Druckmann, if you've seen how he's behaved in the past towards people who dare to criticize The Last of Us Part 2. So I'll be kind of curious to see if they go down that rabbit hole again. And at the very end of this episode, like when the last moment of the end credits came up, you saw HBO and you saw the PlayStation logo and Naughty Dog right next to it, which to me is setting the future for where maybe the more adult content of Sony PlayStation games may end up. I tell you what, The Last of Us could be the yardstick that we measure video game adaptations into live formats. It could be when it's almost done right. Again, the one thing I'll say about this series is that basically certain diversity check marks had to be adhered to. So Pedro Pascal as Joel Miller, his daughter played by Nico Parker, you had that. And we'll see where they kind of screech to a halt and just concentrate on telling us a good story. And I think when The Last of Us Part 3 comes out, it's probably going to be a tie-in to this series, or probably the series might be the catalyst for what's going to happen in the third game when that eventually gets released. So on that one, folks, if you enjoyed this today, please do me a favor. Just do me two things, okay? Just give me two things. That's all I ask for. One, you subscribe. 2, you like this video, and maybe 3, if I'm pushing my luck, you might want to leave a comment below. And on that one, folks, if you were me and if I were you, you better come back for the next video.
Oh, I'm sure your friend will be missing this tonight. It's light on the reading, but it's got some interesting photos.
Now, Ellie, that ain't for kids.
Whoa! How the hell would he even walk around with that thing?
Get rid of that.
Well, hold your horses. I want to see what all the fuss is about. Oh, why are these all stuck together? I'm just fucking with you. Bye-bye, dude.
In the ass end of space, even aliens watch Jason King on Kung Fu Hot Dog. Duke Nukem approves this guy.